Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Friday night felt like every other one before it, quiet, unassuming. I had the apartment to myself, the kind of solitude that used to feel like a gift when we first moved in together. Noelle had left 2 hours earlier, wearing a coral dress that still hung in my memory like a mocking photograph. She kissed my cheek, said something about wine and catching up with the girls, and was out the door before I could reply. I didn't think anything of it. I never did. I trusted her. Or maybe I just didn't think I had a reason not to. I remember I had a half-eaten sandwich beside me, my feet propped on the coffee table, a mindless show playing on mute while I scrolled through my phone. That's when it popped up. Talia is going live, spill session. Pre-wedding chaos. Talia went live often, usually drunken monologues about astrology and her hatred of Mondays. I almost ignored it. But then I saw the caption, pre-wedding chaos. And Noelle was tagged. Curiosity wasn't what made me tap. It was something deeper. An itch. A quiet instinct that whispered, just look. So I did. The screen opened with Talia laughing, already tipsy. Priya was off to the side, munching on popcorn, and Brenna was pouring another round. Then Noelle came into frame, holding her wine glass like it was an extension of her personality. Her cheeks were flushed, her lips too loose. So, Talia said, giggling into the camera, how's the wedding madness, bride-to-be? Noelle rolled her eyes dramatically. He's obsessed with details. You'd think we were organizing the Olympics. Timelines this, logistics that. Like, just write the damn vows and show up, Curtis. The other girls laughed. Even Brenna, the one who once said she admired how organized I was. I sat up, pulse flickering. Clueless, Noelle snorted. He thinks the wedding is about unity and dreams. I'm just trying to survive his Google Sheets. The comments rolled in. People I didn't know. Heart emojis. Men are all the same. Someone typed. Tell him it's your day, another said. I stared. My mouth went dry. She has no idea what he's signing up for, Priya cackled. And then Noelle said it. She took a long sip of wine and added, Curtis is good for a timeline and a salary. The rest? I'll manage. They laughed. I didn't. It wasn't just the words. It was the ease, the comfort she had in belittling me, like I was a character in a joke they'd rehearsed 100 times before. My fingers moved almost on instinct. I typed into the chat, am I? The laughter slowed. I saw Talia's eyes widen. Priya stiffened. Noelle squinted at the screen, leaning in. Wait, what? I typed again, slower this time. Noelle, since you're sharing with everyone, let's be clear, the wedding is off. Panic broke across her face. She lunged for the phone. The screen tilted, voices scrambled. Then black. I sat there, hand frozen around my phone. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't even cracking. It was cold, detached, like a window finally opened in a musty room. I waited for the shame to crash in, but it didn't. I thought of all the Saturdays I spent with her planning table placements and invitations. The nights I stayed up designing menus because she said my eye for order was one of the things she loved about me. The times I reassured her when she doubted herself, when she cried about vendors canceling or dresses not fitting right. All of it. All the patience, the emotional labor, the money, reduced to a punchline over Pinot Grigio. I put my phone down and walked to the kitchen, each step strangely weightless. I poured myself a glass of water, held it against my lips, but didn't drink. I didn't need anything to wash the moment down. I needed to let it burn. 10 minutes later, the calls began. 1, 2, 3 in a row. I didn't answer. I didn't need an explanation. I had already heard it, unedited, live, and approved by laughter. There was no unraveling this. No, I didn't mean it, or, you know how I get when I drink. She had meant every syllable. Not because she hated me. That would have been simpler. But because she didn't respect me. And love without respect? That's not partnership. That's proximity. I looked around the apartment. Our engagement photos were still framed on the side table. I turned them all face down. I opened our shared calendar and deleted everything. Venue walkthroughs, floral consultations, tux fitting. I moved with focus, not rage. There wasn't room for rage anymore. Just clarity. By the time I heard the screech of tires outside and the slam of a car door, I was already sitting calmly on the couch again. The silence of the apartment folded around me like armor. I checked the time, 10:47 p.m. I had no idea what the next hour would hold. But I knew this. Whatever she had to say, it couldn't unring that bell. The live had ended, but the truth had aired. And I had finally seen it for what it was. 15 minutes after the stream went dark, the doorbell rang like it had been punched instead of pressed. I already knew who it was. I didn't move immediately. I let the sound echo through the apartment, let it ring again and again until it became background noise. Then, finally, I opened the door. There she stood, Noelle. Her hair wild from the rush, eyeliner smudged down her cheeks in thick, wet trails. She was wearing the same coral dress from earlier, but now it clung to her like shame. Behind her, just a step back but unmistakably present, stood Lorraine, her mother, the queen of confrontation. Arms crossed, mouth already pursed like she was preparing to recite a closing argument. Curtis, Noelle breathed, her voice trembling. Please. I didn't speak. I stepped aside. Not because I was inviting them in, but because I wanted this conversation over with. Clean and done like tearing off a bandage. Noelle stumbled in first, followed closely by Lorraine, who scanned the apartment like she was looking for ammunition. Curtis, I didn't mean any of that, Noelle said quickly. It was just us talking, girl talk, joking. You called me clueless, I said evenly, cutting through her scramble of words. It was sarcasm, she insisted. You know how we talk when we're drinking. We were just venting. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. It meant enough that you said it on a live stream, in front of strangers, in front of your friends, while laughing. She flinched, mascara streaks drying under her eyes. I was drinking, okay? We were all drinking. Lorraine stepped in, sharp and sure, her voice slicing the air. This is ridiculous. You're going to throw away everything over a few dumb jokes? Over a girls' night? I turned toward her, slow. Was it a joke when she said I was only good for a salary? Noelle looked down at the floor. Lorraine, on the other hand, didn't miss a beat. Oh, come on, she huffed. Everyone exaggerates. You're being oversensitive. You humiliated her. You humiliated our family over a comment. No, I said, shaking my head. I responded to a truth that finally slipped through the performance. Lorraine's hands went to her hips. Do you know what this will look like? How people will talk. You just embarrassed her in front of everyone. She did that herself, I said calmly. I just gave her honesty in return. Noelle's voice cracked again. Curtis, please. You know I didn't mean it like that. You know how I get when they start talking. I got carried away. I studied her for a long moment. The same woman I had once imagined a future with. The woman I had thought would share my name, my home, my every morning. But now she looked small. Not vulnerable. No, this wasn't vulnerability. It was fear. Fear of consequences. Fear that the mask had cracked too early. You got carried away, I repeated softly. And in that space, where the truth usually hides, your real opinion of me came out. You called me clueless. Said I'm good for a timeline and a salary. That's not a slip-up, Noelle. That's how you've always felt. Her face contorted, but she didn't argue. That was the confirmation I needed. You're throwing everything away, Lorraine snapped. I'm throwing away everything fake, I replied. That includes this wedding, this performance, and the version of me you both prefer. Silent, convenient, unaware. Noelle reached for my hand, but I stepped back. The touch of her fingers made my stomach twist. Not with pain, with disgust. You didn't even call me, she whispered. You just announced it like that. On the stream. Funny, I said, narrowing my eyes. That's exactly how I found out how you really see me, on a stream. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thick with the weight of realization. Lorraine's lips pressed into a line. Noelle's shoulders sagged. Please, Noelle said again, voice threadbare now. We can fix this. No, we can't. I opened the front door again, the cool night air brushing in like a final breath of clarity. Please leave. They stood there, unmoving. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I didn't even glare. I just stood still and waited. I had learned something in that moment. Peace doesn't always arrive with softness. Sometimes it arrives when you stop defending yourself to people who never valued you. Lorraine gave one last scoff and turned, heels clicking like gunshots down the front steps. Noelle followed, but not before pausing in the doorway. Her eyes, red and rimmed with regret, met mine. I never thought it would end like this, she said. I nodded. Neither did I. But it needed to. And with that, she left. I closed the door behind them, not in anger, but with the weight of finality. I turned the lock, leaned back against the wood, and let the silence settle around me again. The apartment felt different, lighter, like something toxic had finally been exhaled. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I didn't even sit for a long while. I stood there, staring at the wall, thinking about how many times I'd overlooked the signs. Little comments, subtle digs, the way she rolled her eyes when I spoke too passionately about something that didn't interest her. And for what? To be someone's stability while they publicly tore me down? The mask was off. The engagement was over. And for the first time in months, I felt clear. Not vindicated. Not angry. Just done. Monday came fast, but the weight from Friday hadn't lifted. I barely slept that weekend. Not because I was grieving the end of the engagement, but because I was mentally resorting everything I thought I knew. My world hadn't collapsed, it had shifted. Noel's words from that stream replayed in my head during every silence. He's so clueless. He has no idea what he's signing up for. I knew now exactly what she meant, and I was grateful that I found out before signing my name to vows she never intended to honor. I stepped into my office lobby at 8:12 a.m. sharp, hoping that a routine day of structure and deadlines would act like bleach over the mess Noel left behind. I gave a tight nod to Darla at reception, my usual good morning lost somewhere between exhaustion and calculation. The glass doors to the elevator slid open, and I walked in, only to see a familiar face flash through the lobby's reflection. I almost didn't believe it at first. Noel, and beside her, Lorraine. My stomach turned. They stood at the front desk, Noel animated and teary-eyed, Lorraine stern and righteous as ever. I saw the way Darla looked at me. She was uncomfortable. Even she knew this wasn't just an ex-fiancé showing up with regrets. This was about spectacle. I need to speak with Curtis, Noel said, her voice sharp, her mascara already starting to streak again. It's urgent. He's unavailable, Darla said gently. Unacceptable, Lorraine snapped. He humiliated our family. He owes her. I didn't wait to hear more. I stepped out of the elevator and walked across the lobby with calm steps. I didn't raise my voice, didn't quicken my pace. I met them like someone showing up to collect their last piece of mail from a burned house. Noel. Lorraine, I said, level and composed. This is not the place. Noel's eyes darted between me and Darla. Curtis, please, just give me 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I gave you 5 years, I replied quietly. And Friday night, you showed me what that meant to you. Curtis, Lorraine barked. You are overreacting. This is a family matter, not a corporate issue. No, I said, and I turned to Darla. Call security, please. Noel's face crumpled. No, please, don't do this. But I didn't have to. The building's security team had already taken notice. 2 men approached from the back hallway, polite but firm. Sir, one of them said, do you want them removed from the premises? Yes, I replied without hesitation. They're creating a disruption. Noel turned to the security guards, pleading. Please, I'm not here to make a scene. He won't answer my messages. He blocked my number. That's because the conversation is over, I said. Lorraine wasn't done. She stormed forward a few paces, jabbing a finger in the air between us. You think you can humiliate my daughter and just walk away? She gave you everything. She gave me disrespect. And a live stream, I replied. Let the rest of it go. The guards gently escorted them toward the door. Noel looked back once, mascara now smudged completely. Lorraine hissed something under her breath, but I didn't catch it. I didn't need to. I turned and walked to the elevator, the silence in the lobby returning like a curtain falling. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. On the 14th floor, my boss was waiting near the break room. Mr. Hargrove. Gray hair, steady presence, a man who measured his words like currency, called me into his office. I followed, heart heavy, knowing exactly what was coming. Once the door shut, he didn't sit. He leaned on the edge of his desk. Curtis, he said, I've always seen you as one of the more grounded people in this firm. Reliable. Discreet. But this morning? That was a circus. I didn't invite it, I said simply. I know. And I'm not here to scold you. He paused, rubbing the bridge of his nose. But you need to understand something. Personal drama doesn't belong in these walls. Clients don't care about live streams or mascara or broken engagements. They care that we're focused, sharp, and drama-free. I understand, I said. He gave me a long look. Can you keep it that way? I nodded. I can. Starting now. He gave a half smile. Good. Because I need you to focus on the Brunner account. Presentations Thursday. Consider it handled, I said. When I returned to my desk, my phone lit up with calls and texts, one after the other. Noelle? Blocked. Lorraine? Blocked. Unknown numbers that I didn't recognize but knew well enough to ignore. My inbox pinged with one last straw, a long, meandering email titled, "Please, Curtis." I didn't open it. I forwarded it to my attorney, Felicity Barnes. Within minutes, she replied with a voice message. "Curtis, this is escalating. They've crossed into your workspace. Time to file documentation and prepare a formal no-contact request. We handle this quietly, but thoroughly." I played that message twice. The words felt like ice water on a fever. Quietly, thoroughly. Felicity had always been a no-nonsense type. I'd met her once through a friend's recommendation when I was setting up a contract for a side business, and now she was my firewall. I opened a folder and began compiling everything. The screenshots from the live stream, the chat messages, the saved comments, the call logs, the timestamps. I printed them, logged them, dated them. This wasn't about revenge. I didn't want to ruin Noelle. I wanted to remove her. Cleanly, without dragging it through the mud. I wanted her and Lorraine to disappear into the memory bin, where people who mocked you behind your back while smiling to your face belonged. By the end of the day, Felicity had already drafted the beginning of a cease and desist, as well as notes for a possible restraining order if the behavior escalated. "You're not overreacting," she told me on the phone. "You're protecting your peace." That night, I went home to silence. No buzz of notifications. No banging on the door. No coral dress in my hallway. Just the sound of my own breathing. And for once, it was steady. The envelope came on a Thursday morning, hand-delivered and signed for. I was halfway through my coffee when Darla buzzed me from reception, her voice tight. "Curtis, there's a courier down here. Something from Lennox Pierce and Associates. Legal." My gut knew who it was from. My head just didn't know the extent of the performance Noelle was gearing up for. I walked down, signed for the envelope with my last name etched in cold ink across the front, Warren, and nodded politely to the courier. Then I rode the elevator back to my office and closed the door. Inside was a 2-page letter from a lawyer named Lennox Pierce. The firm's logo was embossed in silver at the top, clean, intimidating, self-important. The letter itself? Not so clean. Apparently, Noelle believed I was financially responsible for wedding expenses totaling $12,000. The breakdown included venue deposits, catering prep fees, a photographer retainer, and 2 separate dress alterations. But it didn't stop there. She was also seeking $7,000 for emotional distress, humiliation, and reputational damage as a result of the live stream breakup. I read it twice. Then I laughed. Not the kind of laugh that feels good. This wasn't release. It was that disbelieving, bitter, I knew this was coming kind of laugh. The kind that hovers right at the edge of a sigh. I scanned the document again. It said I publicly terminated the engagement in a manner designed to humiliate and destabilize the plaintiff. She wanted compensation for an intentional violation of trust. It read like bad fan fiction. I didn't reply to Noelle. I didn't even think about it. I forwarded the scanned letter to Felicity with a simple subject line. "You were right." She called within the hour. "Curtis," she said, voice clipped with professional focus. "This is good." I blinked. "Good. Very," she said. "This is exactly what we needed. Her lawyer just made our case for us." She laid it out. Noelle had opened the door to litigation, but more importantly, she had claimed distress caused by public humiliation. What she didn't count on was that her own live stream, the one she hosted, laughed through, and let run unfiltered, was already downloaded, captioned, timestamped, and preserved as evidence. Everything she said, everything they joked about, it's all on record, Felicity said. You didn't breach anything. She did. Engagements are not legally binding contracts in the way she's hoping to frame it. But even if they were, she voided any expectation of goodwill the moment she publicly demeaned you. She's banking on emotional sympathy, I muttered. She's about to learn that emotion doesn't stand up against documentation. Felicity prepared a formal response that same day. I watched her draft it via our secure portal. Cold, precise, and ironclad. The tone was clear. Noelle publicly defamed Curtis Warren via livestream. This breach of good faith constituted the end of any assumed or proposed legal or financial obligation. Furthermore, we included the video footage, complete with transcribed captions, timestamps, and chat log screenshots that clearly showed Curtis attempting to engage calmly before officially ending the engagement. There was no defamation on my part, no financial negligence, no breach. She included a statement that read, "This matter is considered closed. Any further legal pursuit of the above claims will be regarded as harassment and responded to accordingly." It was beautiful, sharp, freezing. Legal ice, served cold. The letter was sent via email, mail, and courier, every avenue that could be tracked, signed, and timestamped. By Friday evening, Lennox Pierce and Associates had received it. Felicity texted me the signature confirmation with a simple, "Clock's ticking now." I sat back in my office that night long after most people had gone home. The city hummed outside the window, and the usual buzz of emails had quieted. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe without checking over my shoulder. I didn't care if Noelle and her crew read the letter and seethed in silence. I didn't care if they laughed it off or tried to twist it into another pity campaign. Because now, I had the facts, the kind that didn't bend under pressure or shrink under confrontation. I stared at the screen for a while, then opened the folder I'd been keeping everything in. Screenshots, call logs, notes, receipts, photos from the stream. It was clinical now, no longer personal. I could examine it all like evidence left behind from someone else's life. The thing about clarity is that it doesn't always feel like peace at first. Sometimes it just feels like silence where chaos used to live. Noelle had wanted attention, validation, and financial retribution. What she got instead was a mirror she couldn't escape, one that reflected her words back at her in a courtroom tone. I didn't share it with anyone. I didn't need to. I wasn't after a public takedown or applause. I was after stillness. And that's what Felicity gave me, through clauses and citations, through structure and boundaries. When I left the building that night, I didn't feel powerful. I felt protected. There's a difference. I got in my car, sat for a long moment, then finally turned the key. The drive home was quiet. The city lights blurred by the window. My phone didn't ring. My inbox stayed empty. Noelle may have started a war of emotion, but I had responded with precision. And she wasn't prepared for that. Not then. Not now. Not ever. I should have expected the call from Gregory. Noelle's father had always been the quiet one in the family, low tone, high diplomacy. While Lorraine played chess with her voice and emotion, Gregory had always been the peacekeeper. When my phone rang that Wednesday evening, and I saw his name flash across the screen, I knew exactly what kind of conversation it would be. Still, I answered. "Curtis," he began, warm but wearied, like a man stepping into a room full of broken glass. "I know things have gotten out of hand." "That's one way to put it," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "I wanted to reach out before this gets any worse," he said, the sound of a television muttering softly in the background. "Noelle's not herself. Lorraine's pushing her in all the wrong ways, and I think we can find a way to de-escalate things before anyone does something they regret." "I haven't done anything I regret," I said plainly. A pause, then a sigh. "Curtis, maybe we can find middle ground. Something reasonable." This spiral, it's not good for anyone. I appreciated Gregory. I really did. But this wasn't about a misunderstanding anymore. It wasn't about hurt feelings. It was about watching the person I once planned to build a life with weaponize embarrassment, money, and sympathy for damage control. "Gregory," I said carefully, "I watched your daughter mock me in front of hundreds of people, live. She called me clueless, said I was only good for a timeline and a salary. That wasn't a mistake. That was a reveal." He didn't argue. He didn't rush to correct me. He just sighed again, deeper this time. I had hoped it wouldn't come to this. I ended the call respectfully, but firmly. "I hope you understand that I'm moving forward, not backward." We hung up without a fight, but I knew the détente wouldn't last long. Not with Lorraine still maneuvering, and certainly not with Noelle's pride cornered like a wounded animal. The next strike came less than 24 hours later. And this time, it hit where they thought I wasn't looking. It started with 3 missed calls from unknown numbers. Then an email alert from my bank. "Fraud alert. Suspicious activity on your credit card ending in 4439. My stomach dropped. That card. I'd forgotten all about it. An old joint account I'd opened during our second year together, mostly for home decor expenses and travel bookings. I had stopped using it months ago but never formally shut it down. Rookie mistake. I opened the transaction log. For purchases, all within the last 12 hours. $342.19, Sephora, online. $268.75, luxury skincare retailer. $144.60, online fashion boutique. $439.99, high-end hair tools store. Total, $1,195.53. All shipped to the same address, her apartment. I didn't hesitate. I dialed Felicity while forwarding the email. Fraud, I said as soon as she picked up. Already reading it, she said, and already drafting the response. Within an hour, she filed a fraud report with the bank, who immediately froze the account and initiated a reimbursement protocol. Then she sent a notice to Lennox Pierce, stating that any future unauthorized use of shared financial instruments would result in a criminal complaint. This wasn't emotional fallout anymore. This was sabotage, and we were done playing nice. That night, I sat in my living room staring at the framed blueprint of the house we once planned to build together. It had been Noelle's idea, her dream, she'd said. A modern craftsman with a wraparound porch, navy shutters, a dog in the yard, maybe two. She called it our future, but she had always meant her design with my money. I took the frame down and slid the paper out. I folded it slowly, precisely, and slipped it into the shredder. The hum of the blades was strangely soothing. The next morning, I received an email from HR. Subject, anonymous report, workplace behavior concern. I clicked it open, already feeling the fatigue crawl up my spine. It was an anonymous tip claiming I had created a hostile work environment, that I was erratic since my breakup, and that I'd shouted at a receptionist over a personal matter. Complete fabrication. And I knew exactly where it came from. Felicity's voice was calm but sharp when I called her. They're going scorched earth now, she said. They're losing ground, and their only remaining weapon is narrative. That's how smear campaigns are born, quiet accusations meant to destabilize your character before you get the chance to defend it. She compiled everything. Every log, every screen, every receipt. We began building a case, not just for restraining measures, but for potential defamation if it continued. The legal equivalent of putting sandbags around my name. My manager, Argrove, called me into his office by noon. Curtis, he said, I need to ask, are you okay? Yes, I said, simply. But someone out there is trying to make it seem like I'm not. He nodded. I figured. None of this fits who you are. But I have to document it. I trust you'll keep it contained. I will, I said. And I have legal steps in motion. He appreciated that. So did I. By the time I got home that evening, the inbox was quiet. My accounts were secure. Felicity had sent an official warning letter to Lennox Pierce, warning them that the next false accusation would be met with court filings, not conversations. This wasn't a battle anymore. This was defense. Fortified and firm. Noelle may have thought she could control the narrative with tears and mascara, with retail therapy and anonymous slander. But actions have cost. And passive aggression? That gets expensive. By the second week of silence, I thought the worst of the storm had passed. No calls. No new charges. No screaming matches in the lobby or suspicious letters sliding through my mail slot. It was a dangerous quiet, the kind that makes you lower your guard just enough to get hit square in the chest. And it came not with a scream, but with whispers. The first sign was a DM from a college acquaintance I hadn't spoken to in years. Hey man, is everything okay? Just saw some stuff floating around. If it's not true, you might want to know. Attached were screenshots. Blurry at first glance, but the usernames were real. So were the accusations. Claims that I had been emotionally controlling. That I had isolated Noelle from her friends. One post even included a vague story about me policing her clothing choices and monitoring her spending. That one made me laugh until I realized people were sharing it like gospel. It wasn't just posts. It was comments, threads, quiet campaigns. He always seemed like the type. She dodged a bullet. I heard he made her quit her old job. That's what happens when men try to play husband and boss. None of it was true, but that didn't stop it from spreading. Then came the hit to my professional life. Sarah, a coworker I trusted, pulled me aside in the break room with a concerned expression. Curtis, she whispered, I got an anonymous message through my LinkedIn. It said I should be careful working with you, that you don't respect women in the workplace. I stood there, dumbfounded. Sarah had known me for years. She'd seen me put in late hours, take on team tasks without complaint, advocate for interns, and always keep the door open. Her face said she didn't believe the message, but the fact that it reached her at all meant this wasn't random, it was targeted. I forwarded everything to Felicity. Every screenshot, every rumor, every vague accusation. I even dug into old emails, social accounts, and logs to track down IP addresses when possible. She created a file she called the smear folder. It grew thicker by the hour. This is textbook, she told me. They can't beat you legally, so they're trying to dismantle your reputation one whisper at a time. It's the modern version of slashing tires, just digital and sneakier. That same day, someone from HR asked to check in. They framed it politely, just a quick conversation. But I knew what it was. The damage from the whispers had reached the decision-makers. My career was starting to bend under the weight of Noelle's bitterness. I sat across from HR Director Monica and kept my voice steady as she tiptoed around the issue. There have been some concerns, she said, raised outside the company, but they reference internal dynamics. We're obligated to take them seriously. I nodded. I understand. I forwarded every false claim, every rumor, and the legal documentation of harassment to my attorney, who's already issued warnings. None of it will be tolerated. Monica blinked. You filed legal action? I've documented everything, I said, and I'm prepared to escalate. She took notes. I saw the shift in her expression, the quiet appreciation of someone who thought they were dealing with a crumbling man and found structure instead. When I walked out of that room, I didn't go back to my desk. I walked outside. I stood on the corner, just outside the parking garage, letting the cold wind bite into me like a reminder that I was still here. Still steady. Still myself. Noelle had tried everything. Pleas, guilt, legal threats, and now the nuclear option, character assassination. I should have seen it coming. I had underestimated just how desperate a person can get when faced with consequences for the first time in their life. Felicity called that night. Her voice was different, more deliberate. I'm filing for a temporary restraining order, she said. Based on the volume and pattern of defamation, the unauthorized card use, and the workplace interference, we can justify immediate action. I was quiet for a moment. You think it'll stop her? No, Felicity replied. But it'll stop anyone helping her. Carolyn, Talia, Priya, anyone forwarding rumors or acting on her behalf. The court order will name them too, if needed. Good, I said. Then let's do it. We logged everything. Even burner voicemails that popped up on my phone. Untraceable numbers with muffled voices pretending to be neutral third parties. Felicity had a forensic audio tech analyze them. 3 matched Noelle. 1 matched Talia. The next morning, she filed the request. 27 pages. 3 attachments. Dozens of screenshots. 1 USB drive. Evidence packaged like armor. This isn't heartbreak, Felicity told the clerk. This is harassment. And that became our battle cry. I didn't cry during any of this. I didn't collapse or scream or write dramatic posts. I stayed quiet. I stayed strategic. I let the truth do the heavy lifting. Because this wasn't about proving I was good. It was about proving I wasn't what she wanted people to believe. A few days later, Sarah from work emailed me a quote. Truth is like the sun. You can shut it out for a time, but it ain't going away. It made me smile. Just a little. The gossip grenade had gone off. But instead of being buried in the rubble, I was still standing. And now, I was ready to return fire, with facts, files, and legal firepower. The courthouse smelled like disinfectant and paperwork, bleached tiles, worn benches, the low hum of tension hanging over every room like a fog. I sat beside Felicity, dressed in a navy suit, polished but not flashy. She told me not to overdo it, look presentable, not performative. She was right. We weren't here to put on a show. We were here to end one. Across the aisle sat Noelle, her posture impeccable, like someone trying to prove grace under pressure. She wore pale lavender, probably on purpose, a soft color meant to project vulnerability. Her makeup was light, tasteful, like she wanted to be the image of a woman scorned, not a woman caught. Lorraine sat behind her, clutching her purse with a white-knuckle grip, her lips pursed like she'd been sucking on lemon slices since dawn. Their attorney, Lennox Pierce, sat stone-faced, a folder on his lap, eyes flicking across the courtroom as if scanning for sympathy. Felicity didn't flinch. She reviewed the stack of evidence one more time, then turned to me. Don't react to anything unless I ask you to. Remember, we're not trying to win a debate. We're laying out facts. The bailiff called our case number. We stood. I felt the air shift when the judge entered. A tall man with a silver beard and the kind of stare that silenced nonsense. Judge Hampton, known for his no-frills approach. Good. Lennox opened. He painted Noel as the devastated party. This engagement was abruptly ended in a public and humiliating way, he said. My client suffered emotional trauma, reputational damage, and financial fallout due to the defendant's impulsive actions. She seeks restitution. Not only for wedding expenses, but for the undue distress caused by a highly public breakup. Noel sniffled on cue. Lennox passed her a tissue. I didn't move. I watched. I listened. I waited. Then Felicity stood, cool as glass. Your Honor, she said, voice clear, the plaintiff is not here because she was humiliated. She's here because she was recorded humiliating someone else, my client, publicly, gleefully, and voluntarily. She pressed play on the courtroom monitor. The video lit up the screen. There it was, Talia's live stream. The jokes. The laughter. Noel sipping wine. He's so clueless. Good for a salary. The room didn't move. Even Lennox stopped blinking. The words echoed louder in the silence. Then came the screenshots. My first message. Am I? The visible shock on their faces. The second message. Since you're sharing with everyone, let's be clear. The wedding is off. The judge leaned forward, squinting slightly at the footage. This was streamed live? He asked. Yes, Your Honor, Felicity replied. Over 300 viewers. No privacy. No password. Just mockery, on full display. She let it breathe. Then she continued. We have documented proof of post-breakup financial fraud. Over $1,100 in unauthorized charges on a joint credit card. We've also compiled anonymous messages sent to Mr. Warren's co-workers, HR staff, and LinkedIn contacts. These included false allegations of emotional abuse and controlling behavior, none of which were ever substantiated, reported, or supported by any personal or professional evidence. She placed the smear folder on the table. Every item is timestamped. Every screenshot verified. Every voice message forensically matched. Lennox tried to recover. My client was provoked. She reacted to being humiliated in real time. Felicity didn't blink. Your Honor, if being confronted by the man she mocked is now considered provocation, we have seriously lost our understanding of cause and effect. The judge nodded slowly, tapping his pen on the desk. He turned to Noel. Miss Ellis, did you speak those words in the video? She cleared her throat. I was drinking. It was meant to be private. It was a live stream. He cut in. You pressed record. You posted publicly. You invited commentary. She looked down, eyes glassy. The performance was faltering. He looked at Lennox. Did your client inform you of this recording before filing the complaint? Lennox shifted uncomfortably. We were made aware afterward, Your Honor. Yet you still pursued emotional damages for a situation your client created, the judge said. Silence. A tight silence. Then came the ruling. I find that the defendant's actions were in response to clear and public provocation. The plaintiff's live stream, her own statements, and subsequent behaviors constitute a pattern of targeted defamation and harassment. The court sees no grounds for damages, emotional or financial, owed by Mr. Warren. He wasn't done. I further grant the defendant's request for a temporary restraining order. Effective immediately, Miss Ellis is prohibited from contacting Mr. Warren in any form, including through third parties or social media. Violation will result in legal consequences. Noel gasped. Lorraine stood abruptly. This is outrageous, she shouted. The bailiff moved toward her. She sank back into her seat. The judge continued. This is not heartbreak. This is harassment. Court is adjourned. The gavel dropped. A clean, heavy sound. Noel's face cracked for real then. Not the curated grief, not the practiced tears. Just loss. The kind you feel when the show ends and no one applauds. I walked out with Felicity, the sun brighter than I expected. How do you feel? She asked. I let out a long breath. Like I finally shut the last door. She nodded. Good. Now no one else gets to open it. We didn't celebrate. We didn't gloat. We just walked into the day like two people done with storms. For the first time in months, I wasn't defending myself. I was free. And Noel? She was finally forced to listen to the truth play back. Word for word, laugh for laugh. A mirror, framed by law, impossible to turn away from. The morning after the courtroom ruling felt like breathing after months underwater. I stood at the window of my apartment, coffee in hand, watching the city stretch into the day. No pings from my phone. No frantic emails. No disguised numbers calling back to back. Just the quiet hiss of the coffee maker and the low hum of traffic outside. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It just arrives like this. First order of business, cleaning house. And I meant that literally and digitally. Felicity had advised it, and I agreed. It was time to audit every possible entry point into my life and lock it all down. So I started with the small things, new passwords on every account. Banking, email, cloud storage, even my Netflix profile. Everything was scrubbed, reset, and resecured. I changed security questions. I enabled two-factor authentication. I made a spreadsheet of what had been changed, backed it up, and stored it offline. Next came the shared financial remnants. I closed the old joint card for good, notified the credit bureaus to watch for fraudulent activity, and requested a report freeze. I deleted every payment app Noelle ever used to send quick money for groceries or split dinner with the girls. No more backdoors. Then I moved on to the harder part, the emotional leftovers. That meant sorting through the closet and drawers, reclaiming space that had once been shared. Her bathrobe, still hanging on the back of the door. Gone. A stack of bridal magazines buried under old tax documents. Gone. The framed vision board we made together, scrapbook clippings of houses, vacation spots, a golden retriever, and the word forever in cursive straight into a trash bag. And then came the contacts purge. My phone held more connections to her world than I realized. Talia, Priya, Brenna, even Carolyn from her office, who once invited us to a couple's game night. All deleted. Some had stayed silent. Others had sent neutral messages after the live stream fallout. Thinly veiled sympathy wrapped in judgment. We're all human. Things said in the moment shouldn't ruin a future. Blocked. Mutual friends had divided themselves like tectonic plates. There were the loyal, the ones who reached out not to pick sides, but to ask how I was doing. The ones who had quietly unfollowed Noelle after the live stream without needing a press release about it. Then there were the deluded. The ones who swore she didn't mean it, or who treated the breakup like a celebrity scandal to gossip over. And finally, the neutral ones. The observers. Quiet, detached, safe behind the idea that staying uninvolved was the most mature response. That category hurt the most, I think. Because silence is rarely neutral. It's just fear in polite clothing. I didn't reach out to any of them. I didn't need to. I wasn't rebuilding my social circle. I was refining it. Felicity sent a follow-up email that afternoon with copies of the judge's signed restraining order and a cease and desist letter addressed to Carolyn, who we'd traced as the source of at least 2 fake LinkedIn messages. The letter was blunt. Any further defamatory actions would result in legal proceedings and a formal complaint to her employer. "We're not playing anymore," Felicity wrote in the email. "She wants to test the law? Let her. But she won't enjoy what happens next." I responded with 2 words. Understood. Grateful. Then I sat down and did something I hadn't done in weeks. I wrote. Not a legal response. Not a damage control note. Just me, on paper. I opened an old journal I hadn't touched since before the engagement. It still smelled faintly of the cedar drawer I kept it in. I flipped past pages of wedding plans, old reflections, and quotes I once loved. Then I wrote, "Today, I reclaimed my home, my name, and my silence." Not because I won, but because I stopped trying to convince people who never really saw me. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't profound. But it was honest. And that mattered more than anything. Around sunset, I sat on the balcony, sipping the last of my coffee gone cold. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. Somewhere, wind chimes tinkled. The city hadn't changed, but I had. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of the next hour. Noelle's social media had gone quiet. I checked once, not to stalk, but to confirm the silence. Her accounts were still active, but her last post was a soft filtered photo from 2 weeks ago with a caption that now read like a performance. "Building forever with someone who truly sees me." That post had hundreds of likes and dozens of comments. But there were no recent updates. No stories. No engagement hashtags. Just a pause. Probably waiting to see how much of her narrative still held water after the courtroom dismantled it. I let it be. The USB drive with the live stream and chat screenshots now lived in a fireproof safe, labeled simply, "Reality Check." I didn't watch it again. I didn't need to. The memory of it was enough, not for pain, but for clarity. Sometimes, people hand you the truth without meaning to. Sometimes, they show you their blueprint before the house collapses. That night, I turned off my phone, closed the blinds, and slept for 8 full hours. No interruptions. No messages. No dreams of wedding aisles or apology letters. Just rest. Boundaries had never been my strength before. I was the fixer, the builder, the one who smoothed things over to avoid the awkward silences. But not anymore. I had learned to be quiet without being weak, firm without being cruel. I didn't leave the light on for her. I didn't leave a door cracked open. I didn't need to. The barricades were up, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. And behind them, for the first time in a long while, it felt like home. A month passed. Quietly. Deliberately. The kind of quiet that didn't hum with suspense, but with healing. My mornings were mine again, coffee at my kitchen counter, without the usual ping of passive-aggressive texts, no rushed phone calls about florists or napkin colors. The apartment had changed too, though not in structure, just in energy. It no longer felt like a showroom for a future that had been all costume and no character. It was mine again. Lived in. Grounded. I hadn't heard from Noelle since the courtroom ruling. Not a call, not a visit, not a single message, at least not directly. Occasionally, a mutual acquaintance would send me a vague update like, "Saw Noelle at Whole Foods. She looked different," or "She moved back in with her parents, apparently." I never responded. I didn't ask for these breadcrumbs. I didn't follow them. The story of her aftermath wasn't mine to finish, and I no longer cared to know how she edited her fall. Then, one Saturday morning, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. No stamp. No return address. Just my name, Curtis, written in handwriting I knew better than my own. I stared at it for a long moment, the air around me still and too warm, like something waiting to be disturbed. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. No dramatic font, no poetic flair. Just lined notebook paper, folded into thirds. It started without preamble. We were supposed to build a life. I was stupid. I messed it up. I know that now. The rest of the letter was a slow unraveling of remorse, some real, some performative. She talked about how the live stream was never meant to be hurtful, how the girls hyped her up, and how she thought we were stronger than a few words. She said she missed the way I used to make coffee in silence, and how I always left one sock drawer just a little ajar, like I never really unpacked fully. She didn't ask for another chance. She didn't beg, but she tried to reopen the door with nostalgia, hoping it might creak enough to let her shadow back in. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into a manila envelope. Then I placed it in my filing cabinet under a new section I created that morning. Past. Closed. I didn't respond. I didn't even feel tempted. Not because I hated her, but because I didn't owe the past a performance. That letter would be her last encore. And I wouldn't be clapping. Later that week, I was clearing out old USB drives when I found it again. Reality check. The one labeled and archived with the same precision I used in every client folder. I held it in my hand for a moment. I didn't plug it in. I didn't need to. I knew every word of that live stream. I could still hear the laughter, the clink of glasses, the smugness in their voices as they dissected my worth with the ease of people who never expected consequences. But now, it was just a file. Digital evidence of someone else's mistake. No longer a wound, just a record. What surprised me most about the passing weeks wasn't how I felt about Noelle, but how I felt about myself. I expected anger to linger. I thought I'd obsess over what signs I missed, what I could have said differently, how I could have saved face earlier. But instead, I felt lighter. Like carrying a bag for years only to realize it was never mine to begin with. The people who remained in my life stopped bringing her up. They respected the quiet. They saw the difference in me, too. I laughed more easily now. Not because things were perfect, but because nothing felt like a performance anymore. I didn't have to act like I was okay. I was okay. I had lunch with Gregory one afternoon. He asked, gently, if I was open to hearing how things had turned out with Noelle. I told him he didn't need to explain anything. But he did anyway. Maybe for his own peace. She's trying to start over, he said, stirring his iced tea slowly. She's not proud of how she handled things. Lorraine's been quieter, too. We all saw the video eventually. I nodded. I'm glad you did. She had to learn the hard way that some bridges don't rebuild, he said quietly. I'm sorry it happened to you. I appreciated that. But I didn't let it linger. I didn't need a reframe. I didn't need an apology from anyone else. After lunch, I walked a few blocks through the city. It had rained earlier, and everything smelled like renewal. Wet concrete, distant jasmine, the faint ozone scent that follows a storm. I looked around at people rushing by, couples arguing playfully, a woman reading on a bench, a kid feeding pigeons breadcrumbs too fast. Life was happening, and I was part of it again. That night, I cleaned out the last drawer in my home office. Tucked behind a stack of old folders was a save-the-date card. Ours. The date embossed in gold foil, the corners slightly bent. I held it between two fingers like it was fragile. Then I smiled. I didn't feel loss anymore. Just relief. I tossed it in the shredder, and as it disappeared, I realized something. There would be no final confrontation, no dramatic moment of closure, no montage of mutual tears. Just this. A quiet home, a clear mind, and a future free of shadows. Noelle had her chance at a public performance. She took the stage. She said her lines. But there would be no encore. Not for me. Not for us. Not for the version of love that looked like a stage but felt like a trap. That story had ended. And I didn't need to explain why. Sometimes the best final word is no word at all. There's something sacred about waking up without dread. About opening your eyes and not feeling a phantom weight pressing on your chest, waiting to remind you of some looming obligation, some emotional war zone waiting in the next room. That's how I used to live on edge, constantly managing expectations, walking the thin wire between partnership and placation. Now, I woke up to silence, to stillness. And it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. My mornings belonged to me again. I didn't have to race to text updates about my schedule or double-check that the almond milk in the fridge was the right brand. I didn't have to hear comments like, "Wow, still using that cologne?" Or "You're wearing that to the office?" disguised as banter, but chipped at me all the same. It's amazing how much of yourself you lose when you're trying to preserve someone else's comfort. These days, I spend the first 10 minutes of the morning on my balcony, mug in hand, watching the city stretch and yawn. I listen to the world come alive, car engines coughing to life, neighbors yelling for their dogs, someone always honking too early. It's ordinary. It's uneventful. But it's mine. I thought there would be an adjustment period after it all, after canceling the wedding, after court, after locking everything down. I expected loneliness, maybe even a brush with regret. But what came instead was clarity. The realization that I had been on autopilot for longer than I admitted. That for years, I had mistaken stability for peace. I told myself we were a team, when really, I was just the silent partner in a performance she curated for likes, applause, and filtered validation. Now, the performances were over. My calendar was free from dress fittings, vendor calls, floral consultations, and bachelorette drama I was expected to bankroll. I hadn't just dodged a wedding. I'd escaped a lifetime of being managed, corrected, and quietly erased. People often asked if I was dating again. Some even offered to set me up, coworkers, friends, even a cousin who meant well but chose a woman who wore a t-shirt that said, "If he ain't rich, he ain't it." I smiled politely and declined. It's not that I've closed myself off, but I'm not rushing to rebuild what I never truly had. Right now, I'm more interested in rediscovering what peace feels like in my own company. I'm learning to be with myself, unapologetically, fully, and without editing. I've started writing again. Not for work. Not for court documentation. For me. Pages filled with thoughts, pieces of memory, dreams I shelved when I was too busy being reliable. I go to the gym without explaining where I am. I take drives with no destination, no tracking apps, no one texting. Where are you? With a passive-aggressive smiley at the end. I cook more. I sleep better. And the dreams, they're different now. No longer fragmented with wedding aisles and fights disguised as conversations. Now they're open fields, places I haven't seen yet, new doors with no faces behind them. I wake up from those dreams and I feel a strange comfort. Like something better is on the way, not because I'm chasing it, but because I'm finally making space for it. I had dinner with my brother recently. He asked me the question I hadn't been prepared for. If you could do it over, would you still have proposed? I stirred my drink for a while before answering. No, I said, but not because she's a bad person. Because I wasn't ready to admit that I needed more than someone who just tolerated me. He nodded like he understood. You were a sure thing. For her. That stuck with me. A sure thing. That's what I had been. The fallback. The dependable. The salary. The structure. The easy answer to a chaotic life she didn't want to manage alone. But love? That needs more than convenience. She once said I was too predictable. Now I wear that like armor. Predictability isn't a flaw, it's stability. And the right person won't resent it. They'll cherish it. Sometimes I think about the version of myself I was during the engagement. The man constantly revising his voice, softening his opinions, budgeting his worth to make sure it didn't overshadow her insecurities. I want to reach back and tell him it's okay to ask for more. It's okay to need respect. It's okay to walk away. Noelle taught me something, though probably not in the way she intended. She taught me that love spoken in private but ridiculed in public isn't love. That anyone who makes you the punchline in a room full of people you've never met doesn't see you. They see your usefulness. And that live stream? It still exists. Stored away in a digital folder. Not for revenge. Not for leverage. Just as proof that I wasn't crazy. That my instincts were right. That the quiet voice that said, "This isn't love," had been telling the truth all along. The USB is labeled plainly, reality check. And that's exactly what it gave me. Now, I walk lighter. My spine straighter. My voice no longer measured against how she might twist it later. I'm not flawless. I still have moments when I replay things, when I wonder if I ignored early signs. But those thoughts don't linger. They don't poison the day. They pass like clouds, seen, acknowledged, and left behind. I used to think trust was about believing the best in someone. But I've learned it's also about believing the best in yourself. In your ability to walk away. In your right to protect your peace. In your refusal to make yourself smaller to make someone else feel bigger. So here I am. Present Curtis. A little bruised. A lot wiser. No longer performing. No longer explaining. Just living. And as for the future? He's not waiting for permission. He's already on his way.